Hey, my name is Axel Villamil. We're here on 24 Shades of Blue. And in the studio today, we have Sergeant Natasha Zver of the 22 Division Neighborhood Community Officer Program. Welcome. And Anthony Alexander, the man himself, Police Constable. How you doing?
We're good. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I'm glad. I'm super happy to hear about all the amazing work you do. This is a fun topic because, we've had a great conversation on our pre-interview, and I just want to get in here and chat. We're here in person. We're back in here. So what are the roles and responsibilities of a neighborhood community officer, and what drew you both into wanting to join the program?
There's many roles for the neighborhood officer. One of them is being in the community and connecting with the residents. We build a lot of relationships through programs that we run. We run programs with ProAction. We partnership with Toronto Community Housing. We partner with, I'm speaking for 22 Division, partner with LAMP and some other outside agencies as well. And again, it's to build that relationship between the police and the community, especially working with youth, to realize that, the police aren't bad people. They're there to help and assist in any ways that we can. We do other things as well. We help to deliver food, to identify people who need, in the communities who may be in need of food. So I know we've partnered with Kitchen 24, and that's service-wide as well, to do things like that. We do, obviously we answer our radio calls in our neighborhood. And the good thing with that is when the officers are there for so often, like an 11-hour day, you're there for like 10 hours a day. And the people there, they trust you and they can open up to you, and they'll probably tell you a little more than, they would tell the average primary response unit officer coming, to answer their phone calls, to answer their calls for service. So it's really good in a lot of respects.
No, but what drew you in? I want to know, what is it about Natasha?
I've always loved the community aspect of policing, and with the neighborhood program, you kind of have to be well-rounded. Mm-hmm. Again, you have to be very community-oriented. You have to go in. You can't go in with a chip on your shoulder. You go in and I'm one of you. And I always tell people in the community, this is just a uniform. It's clothes. I'm no different from, any resident that's in there. And I know all of my officers that work for me are the same way as well. It's like, yeah, we're on the same level. And I always wanted to help these communities. And it's just something I've always been drawn to. Again, you have to be well-rounded. So if you like to do everything in terms of creating events, attending community events and meetings, and that's another thing we do a lot of is hold community meetings. Mm-hmm. Again, you have to have a certain personality to do that as well. So you have to be outgoing and not afraid to talk to people.
You want to care.
Yeah. So it takes a different type of person to do that. And I think when you're invested in a certain division and you've connected with certain people, you really want to make that difference.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and especially if they're if they're neighborhoods that have high crime rates, or people who are vulnerable, you want to help, right? So that's a big part of it.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add to what Natasha had said is we have, as neighborhood officers, we have a unique opportunity to actually spend the time, so we're not jumping from one 911 call to the next, so we can actually take the time to be in our neighborhoods. And as Natasha said, we get to work with the residents, we get to work with business owners, and we also get to work with other community partners. And often what we're doing is we're bringing those three parties together, and that allows all of us to work together in order to try to create healthier communities. And the reason that I got into it is, growing up in the GTA, I had gotten into a little bit of trouble myself, and it was a little bit of a challenge for me. And there was a few people that were positive influences in my life, and I felt becoming a neighborhood officer allows me the opportunity to maybe be that positive influence in some of those kids' lives. And if I can help one kid today, and 2 kids a week, and 3 kids a month, and maybe 5 kids a year, then I'm doing my job. So that's the reason why I'm here.
It's the partnership between the community and the police, because, and I've always I tell this to everybody, not only the people in the community, but also other police officers and people outside the community, like my own friends and families. Like, it's not, the police can't do everything and the community can't do everything.
Exactly why I would love to touch on sustainability. Like, first off, how are they even responding to this? let's be real, elephant in the room. There was a lot of trauma that has happened, with, the community, especially POCs. How have they responded to this program? And let's talk about some positives. Like, has it been good? Has it been bad? Has it been hard?
It's hard at first,
Yeah.
especially as a new officer into the program, because the community, like, they don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like a stranger coming into their community. And of course, they're not going to trust you right away. And, and you spoke about the trauma in the past.
Mhm.
And I think it's a huge issue because they say, well, why should I trust the police?
Yeah.
So you have to be patient, which is huge.
Of course.
You have to be persistent.
Yeah.
And you just keep talking to them. And if they don't want to talk, they don't want to talk. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But I'm not going to leave. And we're still going to be there. And we'll do our best to, ease them into understanding what the neighborhood officer program is about. And I think that's a big thing too, is transparency. So they want to know, like, what is the program about and why are you here?
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think that's with everybody. It doesn't matter, what your background is what city you live in, what country you live in. People want to know why.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a big thing. And I think once you explain that to people, they start to come around. But again, that trust, it takes a while. And that's why we do these programs. It's to build that relationship between us and the community. And that's why, I encourage that you go to all those radio calls because they see, like, oh yeah, we can trust you. You're in our neighborhood and you're helping us.
Yeah.
So it's a big, yeah.
Oh, of course. I think transparency is a big thing. I mean, just in general, for like outside looking in, I remember a friend of mine, she posted this thing on Facebook. And she's like, why is there an officer with a gun on the TTC? And da da da. And I was just like, yeah, but why is there? And then, but then you look further. And I think when I was talking to Chief Raymer, he was telling me that would happen only because of like maybe events around the world, and we're just trying to just make sure things are safe in our own city, which is just preventative. But we don't know that, right? We don't see that. But that's why, what you do in your community is so needed because you need that transparency to talk about what am I doing here? Why are we doing this? There's no BS. Like, I'm here because I genuinely care, type of thing. So, yeah. How about you? And when you're on the ground, a lot. I'm assuming you have obviously been too, but you
yeah. But well, to add to what Natasha has said, idle minds will idle. So when we try to organize these community events, we always have a youth theme. We want to keep them engaged. We want to keep them involved in productive things. And as Natasha said, we also want to make something that has some longevity so that when we step away from it, the community can continue it. And we try to pull that theme through in all of our programs. But aside from that, part of your question was, is it working?
Yeah.
And we that was a question that we had as well too, right? We were like, does this really work? And Natasha, you hinted that it takes a while, and it really does. I remember times in my first year when I walked into communities, and you walk up to the basketball court in summertime, and then it just goes silent, and half of the people kind of just walk away, and the other half kind of just stop playing.
Is that your indicator of like, all right, it's
right,
not really
something's
working,
not right? Or there's a birthday party going on in the backyard, and we ride up on the bicycle, and then all of a sudden it's like sort of a weird silence, right?
Yeah.
And 3.5 years later, 4 years later, we walk up to the ball court, and now someone tosses the ball and say, "Yo, officer, you're in a sweat,
Yeah.
running. Let's run 101, right?" You go up to the backyard and someone's having a barbecue, and they ask you if you need a plate, right?
Yeah.
Recently we had one of our communities have a vigil for one of the people that passed away, and traditionally they would be concerned about police showing up, but instead, 3 years later, they asked us, "Hey, can you come out to the vigil?" So, we questioned, does this work? And it does, but it does take time. And to Natasha's point, you got to be in it and you got to invest the time, but it really does work. The neighborhood program is an effective program if you put the time in, if you have the right people and you put the resources in, which Toronto Police has done.
Absolutely.
I have to commend our top brass for that. They have really committed to this program, and you can see it all the way through from the top levels right down to what we do on the floor. So they've done a good job at that.
So it takes a very special individual to be in the community program, because I feel like, one, you need to be able to provide a lot of genuine love for this community, but also you have to trust them because they need to, it's like a make or break process, I'm assuming here. how do you go about this process, and how long do they, stay at their community?
It's a 4-year commitment,
Wow.
which is long.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I always say to officers who want to apply, I said, you got to be sure, you got to be dedicated for 4 years. And I said, it takes a long time to gather, get that buy-in from the community on that new community officer that's coming in. Right. So, and again, part of that process of getting that person introduced is you got to be aware of succession planning.
Got it.
So bringing in a new officer, say if a new officer came in, I'd partner him or her up with Anthony, and of course he would introduce them to the community and take it from there. And and eventually they'll all get assimilated and they'll start gaining that trust as well. How we go about actually hiring or having somebody come into the neighborhood officer program, we put out a job call.
Yeah.
And there's always a date that you have to apply by. So, and all the list of the qualifications are on there that we require. Once everything comes in and all the applications are in, we review who the applicants are, and then we interview them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's also it's based on their past experiences, and a lot of it is attitude too.
Cool.
I mean, because you can't have somebody in this program who's going to have a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
It takes a certain personality. And if you have that personality where it's like, oh, I don't really care and whatever, the neighborhoods, they're going to pick up on it.
Oh, yeah.
The communities are switched on and they'll know like this officer really isn't in it. They're here for themselves. They're not here for the community. So that's a big thing.
Do you ever
It's
do
really,
like
really
a
big.
trial? So like, let's say, Anthony, you have that person that maybe possibly going to go into another position or whatever, or for another community. Do you ever would kind of gauge and be like, I don't know if the community's feedback, or is it just mainly TPS that like decides that?
It's a bit of both,
Okay,
right?
got it.
So community feedback is huge because that's where you are. That's where you're living for 10, 11 hours of your day is in the community, which in the grand scheme of things, you're spending more time at work in your community than you are at home, right? So community feedback is huge. As well as, as a supervisor, I got to look and see what they're doing and how the community is reacting to them. And again, do the officers work well together? Because if whoever the two officers are together, if they don't work well together, again, the neighborhoods, the communities are going to pick up on it.
Of
And they're
course.
going to say, well, if they can't drive and they can't gel together, well, how are we going to gel with that? Right.
Mhm.
So it's a lot of moving parts when it comes to the neighborhood officer program. You got to be, like I said before, you got to be well-rounded, and it's very, very important.
But also as an officer applying to this, you also have to do a little bit of looking inside as well too. And Natasha hinted at it. Like you have, there'll be days where I am, leading a community meeting. So I'll create an agenda. I'll have speakers. We'll do minutes, and it's an administrative job at that point. And then there's other times where packing boxes and loading up with food and distributing to families in need. And then there's other times where we're out there and we're running programs hand in hand with some of the youth in the neighborhood. And then while we're in the community, there's a robbery at the convenience store, and we're first on scene, and we're going to deal with that.
How do you separate that? Like, I feel like you're a lot of things going on. You have to be everything and everything all the same, but at the end of the day, you're still officers and you got to do your job. So how do you separate that lifestyle? Yeah.
So yes, you have to have a complement of skills, and again, I think part of the opportunity is that you have 6 months for management to look at it and see if it's a right fit. But I also think that 6 months is important for the individual who's in that role, because that kind of gives you an idea as well. Is this really what you want to do? Because as I said, not only is it the complement of skills, but it's a commitment. And Natasha had hinted that, we spend 11 hours a day in our neighborhood, and that's a lot of time. I go home and my family's out at work and out at school, and I spend probably 4 hours a day with them. And a lot of it's downtime, getting ready for bed and then starting up the next day. So I spend more time in my communities than I do with my own family. So, outside of the skills, you have to really want to be involved in that community. You have to be committed to that community.
Absolutely. Like, how's that mindset in your mind? So like, let's say Anthony's out there just drained a 3-pointer. But at the same time, you may have to go like in that second run after somebody, how do you keep that balance in your head, at least, to be like, I'm still cordial and social, but at the same time, like, I got to still be on alert for whatever's happening around me?
I know for me, I've been on this job for 20 plus years, 22 years. And I think most of us have been on this job for a while. And so it's one thing, it's natural.
Got it.
Right. You don't
In the
just,
training.
yeah, it's, you're at work and you just respond to what you need to respond. It's just very second nature, so to speak. And yeah, and I think Anthony, I don't know if he feels any differently, but I think most people would tell you that, yeah, it is what you do. Right. And you always tell people, and people are pretty good about understanding. Say if you're in the middle of, I don't know, an event, and like say we get a 911 call and you got to go, people understand, because you got to explain to them too, like, what if that was you?
Yeah.
Right. And you knew the police were not more than a half a kilometer down the street and they didn't do anything when you're in need. Right. So people are understanding.
At the end of the day, we all signed up as police officers to fight crime and disorder. And that is something that we actually took an oath to do. So at the end of the day, it is one of the primary functions of our role. And being involved in a community-centric style of policing doesn't take us away from the fact that we still fight crime and disorder. Right. And keeping that in mind as well, too, we have to also remember that the community-centric style of policing is also fighting crime and disorder. It's just more proactive way of doing it. So, I think most of the talent that we pick for these roles, for these neighborhood roles, have that as an understanding already. And I think our management does a good job of selecting those people. But as I said, that 6 months is important, not just for Natasha to decide if this person's a good fit, not just for us to see if this person fits our team, but also for that person to say, is this right for me? Because it is a commitment in all of those levels for all of those reasons.
Of course. I mean, I look at it like you said, proactive, right? It's proactive crime fighting right here, right? Getting it right. It's not getting water out of the ship. You're literally patching the hole and like,
right. You can measure things in all different kinds of ways, right? So like, you say, well, does the neighborhood officer program work? Well, can you measure that? Well, sure you can.
Yeah.
When crime and disorder goes down, when violent crimes are down, when there's less calls for service, absolutely it's working. But then there's all the things that you can't measure.
Yes.
When you have community members wanting you to come to events, when you have kids who traditionally wouldn't talk to you now engaging in like positive interaction with you, when you have alleyways and underground parking lots where there's no cigarette butts and litter and broken cans and pee on the floor, and you actually physically have neighborhoods becoming healthier communities, then it works.
It
really
visually
works,
and
right?
emotionally
And
too,
sometimes
right?
those things you can't measure, right?
Yeah.
So it works. It really does.
I mean, from the outside, and if I was on the other units, I'd be like, wow, this looks like a fun job. Well, like, let's talk about the fun. Like, let's talk about the events and fundraisers that you put on for different communities. Can you talk about those? Sometimes
these are the things that makes it worthwhile for us. When we can, I'm just going to share one program in particular that I'm very proud of. We were so middle of COVID. We're obviously very restricted on in-person contact. For an entire year, 2021, we were like doing everything virtually. We couldn't see people, and the communities were suffering. The communities were falling apart. All of the progress that we'd made initially, because we had stopped all of this community engagement, started pulling apart a little bit. So we looked at 2021 as a team, and we looked at it and we said, hey, listen, you know what? Restrictions are easing. We're going to hop in there and we're going to make some stuff happen. So we came up with a complement of programs that we were going to run through the entire year. And we were going to start off with a spring movie event. We were going to go into a summer bicycle event. We were going to go into a fall winter / warm up, and we had all of these programs planned. But I want to talk about the bicycle program in particular because I think we have an ability to shine when it comes to reflecting on that program a little bit. What we did is we reached out to one of our partners, Bicycle Without Borders, in particular, Bikes Without Borders. They take bikes, recondition them, and provide them to people who are in need of bicycles. We reached out to them, and they actually were able to provide us with approximately 60 reconditioned bicycles. What we did with those bicycles is we actually went out to our communities and we launched the program, which was the summer program, the bicycle program, where we had people sign up to this program. They had an opportunity to learn basic bicycle safety skills, basic repair skills, and then we put them through basic bicycle riding skills. We had people who have never been on a bike after that program riding.
There's some people like you. There's more people I know that they're like, actually, I don't ride. I've never rode a bike.
Some of our participants never rode a bicycle ever in their life, and at the end of the day, they were riding. We reached out to Canadian Tire, who through their Jumpstart program provided helmets and pads and bike locks and that sort of stuff. And the interesting thing is, we had these kids put on helmets. We sized them up. We had them put on pads and shoulder pads and knee pads if they needed. They were matched up to a bike that fit them. They went through the program, and at the end of the program, they were able to take all of that stuff home with them. And it worked out great. The interesting thing is, as a result of that program, we continued conversations with Bike Without Borders. And we are in the process now of actually creating a bike hub in the west part of the city that will now be providing bikes to all of the Etobicoke residents, as well as the Mississauga residents that border us. So if everything works out, that bicycle hub will be a product of that initiative that we launched last year. So we're very proud of that.
It's going to feel like Amsterdam in here with all these bikes everywhere. That's awesome.
Right. So they've recently now given us 70 bikes this year. So we're going to continue that program this year. LAMP is on board with us. They provided us the space for this hub to happen. So again, it's just another example of us leveraging all of these partners together and providing a service to the community that engage youth, keep them off the streets, doing something productive. And there's now even talk about maybe hiring someone from the community to do some repairs and do some training for these communities. So that's the fun part of it.
Yeah.
That's where we get to actually take a step back and say, you know what? We made a little bit of a difference. Something works. It makes the community a little bit better. It makes the communities a little bit healthier. It provides productive activity for youth.
How good do you both feel?
It's nice. It's nice. It's nice.
So just wanted to touch on something because it's not just 22. It's all the divisions across the city. And when I was in 11 division, my partner and I, we did a programming with the community there where they had this open gym. It was never being used, and the youth in the area kept complaining, like, we want to do something, there's nothing to do, blah, blah, blah. So we partnered with a number of community agencies, including Toronto Housing and residents in that neighborhood. And we were able to start a program and eventually let the citizens of that community took it over. And much like what Anthony was saying about hiring, we hired a youth to run the program. And we were able to step aside and let them run it. We would always pop in once a week just to say hi, make sure everything's going well. But the community ran it. They ran it themselves. They took it over, and youth were employed. So that was when that was something I was really proud of. Just like he's proud of the bike program, and
Very similarly, I spoke to this professor at U of T, and what she did was a very smart woman. Created electricity for an island, like she's like the Akon of Philippines, and it gave them back time to be productive, which is crazy, right? Like 8 to 10 hours of your day spent in the dark, and now they can actually spend more time to be productive. And in your case, you're providing transportation, you're providing, a space to relieve, getting endorphins pumped and like work out and be active. And I think those are the small invisible hands people don't really understand, where it's just like that small stuff we all take for granted, which is I can go to the gym, I can do this, I can walk somewhere, I can have the ability to, in my neighborhood, which is fine. Things like going outside as well in a safe area. I don't think about those things, but in some other communities, you just don't have that stuff. And I think it's important, really important, all the work that you're doing. So I hope you're super proud of yourselves, because you should be. Reflect on it, just love it.
Yeah, I think we both are very proud.
Good.
And my big thing is the employment aspect of it, to show them, there is jobs out there, and spread your wings, and people. So like I said, they, Anthony and his team got somebody hired. Yeah. We hired a youth, and so it kind of brings me to something else. If you don't mind, if I touch on it, and again, it's something else I'm kind of really happy with. We did, again, my partner and I, back when I was in a different division, we did a career exploration program. Mm-hmm. So I think it was like 5 or 6 different businesses to get them, experience and open up their eyes to all these different job opportunities that they may not have thought of. Like Air Canada's got so many jobs. Ubisoft, which is, I think a lot of people were it was different because
Gaming,
but we did get to see behind the scenes, unfortunately. But and even with the Toronto Police and Toronto Fire that we did as well, we took them to the Marine unit, and most of them didn't even know that existed. So and that's why you like to introduce them to parts of the police service that they may not have any idea, like even dispatch. Going there, because that's a part that you hear these people talk on the radio, but do you really know where do they sit? What do they do? So it's parts of the service that they may never even know about, and that's what I really like doing. And Toronto Fire, of course, and companies like that. And I did carpentry school, in Long and McQuaid. And and you know what? And it was a great education for myself as well, because there's a lot of stuff where I didn't realize. I'm like, God, I wish I had this when I was their age, right? We went to an accounting firm, which they actually loved.
Super needed.
Absolutely loved, which I was surprised. But them in Air Canada, people were like, oh my God, that was awesome.
It's a lead, right? It's just being exposed to that, to know, like, genuinely, like, I have this opportunity. I can do this. I can do stuff outside of where I live. Like, it's just like, because you never think that if you're not given that exposure to be like, whoa, I can do big things and great things. Everybody can. It's just sometimes we don't see it.
And sometimes you need help.
Yeah, correct.
Right? And nobody's ever going to do anything by themselves.
Of course.
You always need help at some point to whatever it is, whether it's getting a job or, moving. Simple things, right? You can't do everything on your own. Whereas, so, I mean, even with us to put that program together, we got the help from Pro Action, Cops and Kids. Right. So we partner with them a lot for funding. So if it wasn't for them, we probably wouldn't have been able to do all that either, right? So, and they get donations from companies. So
I want to do a quick shout out to Toronto Community Housing.
Hey.
They have been champions for us as well with our programs, and we support the same communities. A lot of times, the communities that we're supporting are very heavy Toronto community housing communities as well. So big shout out to Toronto Community Housing. Just want to make that shout out.
There's a lot of amazing things I've heard. So what's the future? What's the future looking like? What are the goals here for this program?
Goals are to make it bigger. Right, to keep expanding. Like I said, we got another new neighborhood that starts May 23rd. That'll be the new Toronto neighborhood. South Etobicoke. So hopefully we can keep expanding, and not just only in 22, but across the city. I think the program is wonderful. And as long as you have the right people doing the right work, it can make the community so much better.
Absolutely. As you said, it works, right? And it took a commitment from the very highest level in this organization. And as I said, down to hiring the right people to walk those communities and be part of those communities. And to your point, I think if we allow this program to continue in the capacity that it's working, and I think we have a really successful program on our hands. So I mean, we've seen the success, but I can see this becoming even bigger. Yeah. I really can.
All the NCOs, more and more.
Yeah, there's a plug for the NCO. Hire more NCOs, right?
But it's not, it's not just, making those neighborhoods better. Yeah, that's our main goal too, right? But, for other agents or other agencies and other units within the service, they can, call up Anthony or the other NCOs and say, hey, do you know what's going on in this neighborhood?
It's just easier because you have the trust already, right?
Yeah. And they may rely on us. So say if there was a shooting or something, and, say Guns and Gangs comes down and no one wants to talk to them. Yeah. But they said, we'll talk to the neighborhood officer.
Most community members, whether it be healthy communities and maybe not so healthy communities, most of the members of those communities want to be part of the solution. They want to be part of fixing the problem. And a lot of times they're afraid to, for many reasons, to talk to police. And be it afraid that there might be retaliation. They're not comfortable with police. Traditionally, they haven't had positive relationships with police, whatever the reasons may be. That's one of the unmeasurables that this program offers. We get people to be comfortable with us and see us as part of the community. And to your point, we're in a position where they can share information a little bit more with us in order to make those communities stronger, healthier, less crime communities. And those are some of the things that can never be measured, right? So yes, to that point, people are more comfortable when we become part of their community and they see us as part of their community.
I'm glad it's working. I'm glad, everything that you do. I mean, again, so important. And to everybody that I've spoken to, in different sections of the force, it just sounds like everybody's part is so needed, right? And taking down a perp is part of the job. It's also building trust in communities is very much, and that's the theme I've gotten every time I'm speaking to people. So just to wrap it up, Anthony, Tasha, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all that you do. Any last shout outs to any people in your community? And
Shout out to TPS. Hats off to the organization for being dedicated to this program. Of course, I want a huge shout out to my communities. Big up, guys. It's all about you. You know that. Thank you to you guys for giving us a little bit of an opportunity to share how we feel and share a little bit of our emotions about this program with you. And I'm happy. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
anytime. This was 24 Shades of Blue. I'm Axel Villamil, and we're out.